In this lecture, we will continue our discussion on radix sort, and we'll also take a look at some algorithms for external sorting. One application of radix sort is to sort strings. So if all the strings have the same length, which we'll say is L, then we can use buckets for each character in our alphabet. That means that we can implement radix sort in O of NL time. Now we'll see an example in just a little bit where we can actually sort strings with the ASCII characters. So we can actually expand it than just the typical 26 letters of the alphabet. The idea is in each pass, we add the item to the appropriate bucket, depending on which character we're talking about. So we'd have a bucket for each character in ASCII. So we would take each item and put it into the appropriate bucket. And then after all of the buckets are populated, we would just go through each bucket and add that string back into the array. And what this does is it ends up preserving the previous sort. Here is an implementation of sorting our strings using radix sort. So let me show you how this works, just so you have an idea. And as we just mentioned, we're assuming that each string has the same number of characters. So we have a string of 10 items, or array of strings of 10 things. And we just put in pretty much several different 3-character strings. Very simple words. Yes, cat, hat, dog, and so forth. So in our main method, we're going to call radix sort, which we'll call radix sort A because we're going to use radix sort on strings rather than just numbers. And we're going to pass the array and the length of each string. And then we have a for loop that's going to print the resulting sorted string. So let's actually take a look at what's going on inside the code itself. So since we're going to be doing radix sort, we need buckets. So we're assuming that we're dealing with ASCII characters. So we're going to create 256 buckets. So that's what's going on with this array list here. So notice that we are using the array list that's given to us in Java. But we're going to create an array of 256 buckets. That's basically what we're doing here. And each bucket is going to correspond to one of the ASCII characters. So that's what's actually happening here. We create an array of buckets. And then for each bucket, we're going to create a new array list. That's what's going on in this for loop right here. Because instead of just incrementing some counting value, we need to store each string in that bucket. So we're going to create a list for each bucket and then add the string as we go. So that's what we're doing with these first couple lines. We create our buckets and make a list for each bucket. So now the main part of the algorithm is done inside this for loop. So what we're doing here is POS is going to be the position of the character we're looking at. So we start with string length -1. So we want to look at the rightmost character of every single string. And we're going to do radix sort on all of those things. Or we're going to do bucket sort on all of those strings based on that rightmost character. So that's what's going on here. So we're going to look at every single string in the array. We're going to look at the character at that position. So we're going to look at the rightmost character of every string and add that string in the appropriate bucket. So that's what this first for loop is doing. So after we add, so just to give an example, let's say we start with the rightmost character. We're going to add all of the different strings in the appropriate buckets based on that rightmost character. So then this for loop is going to reconstruct our array such that it's sorted by the rightmost character. So we're going to look at all the buckets, and whenever we find a string in a particular bucket, we're going to add that string into the array. So we're going to use an index. We start at 0, and then as soon as we find a string, we're going to add it to our array, and then we're going to increment our index. That way we can go on to the next element of our array, and we're going to clear the bucket when we're done. So this first for loop is going to look at every single bucket. And the last thing we do is we clear the bucket because after we read everything in that bucket, we don't need anything else in there. And then in each bucket, we're going to look at all of the strings in that particular list. So then we're going to go back and we would do the second rightmost character of every single string. And then we're going to look at our array and keep in mind that it's already sorted by the rightmost character. So then we're going to add all of the strings into the appropriate buckets based on what the second rightmost character is.
We'll then add everything back into our array, and we just keep repeating this until we get to the leftmost character. So in this case, we're going to do this for loop 3 times because our string has 3 different characters. So let's go ahead and compile and run this code to see that it will in fact sort the strings. So let's compile. There is a warning, and that is because if I click on it, this line right here, because of the whole typecasting part, we've seen this warning before. It's not an issue. We don't have to worry about it. So let's go ahead and run our code. And if we look here, we see that it is sorted in alphabetical order. So bar, cat, cup, dog, fog, hat, hot, p, t. Yeah, so it is sorted in alphabetical order. So this implementation does in fact do radix sort for strings.